loves me as I am. He is my Lord, my shepherd, I his lamb. I have a friend who wants the best for me. He knows my soul and sees all I can be. He came to show us how to live. He came with so much love to give. My friend who listens to my prayer, my Savior, He is always there. I have a friend who loves me as I am. I'm here on earth, a part of His great plan. I have a friend who sees into my heart. He knows I'm weak, yet loves me every part. He died to pay my every sin. He died so I will live for Him. He saved my soul so I could live again. He is my Lord, my brother and my friend. If I am true, I'll walk with Him someday. When I reach out, He's not so far away. Yes, He is near and always loves me so. I have a friend that I'd like you to know.
Well, hello everybody. My name is Esau. I am the son of Isaac, whose father was Abraham. You may have heard the name Father Abraham. There was a song written about it, you know. Father Abraham and many sons of Father Abraham, and I'm one of them, and so are you. My dad literally used to sing that with his brothers. Super embarrassing, but you know, that's what parents do. Speaking of embarrassing, you know how some people, when they're born, they have a little bit of hair on their head? Well, I was covered head to toe in it. Guess what my parents named me? Harry. which in my language is pronounced Esau. I'd like to introduce you to my brother Jacob, back here. Guess what his name means? He grasps the heel. Bet you will never have any idea what he did when we were born. My parents maybe weren't the most creative sorts. I was firstborn, and Jacob and I were super competitive, even in the womb. He wouldn't let me have just a few second head start, so he latched onto my foot as we were leaving. So with all the problems that come later, I can honestly say that it all started when I was born. My parents maybe weren't the best parents. Everybody thinks that, but mine really were maybe not the best. My mother loved Jacob much more than me and was pretty obvious about it. And Dad loved that I was a hunter and could bring in food. He loved him some steak. So one day while I was out hunting, I hadn't had anything to eat in a long time. Game was very scarce. I lived in the desert. Georgia, the house I'm staying, there was deer like walking in the yard. I mean, like, that's just not how the desert works. So it was hot, just baking hot. I was starving. I came home, and Jacob was cooking some stew, and it smelled delicious. I was exhausted. I was sweaty. I was hot. I was covered in dust. It was miserable, and I just wanted some stew. So I go up and ask him. I say, Jacob, can I have some stew? Guess what he says? Sure, I'll sell you some stew. And I'm like, look, I am out there trying to provide for the family day in and day out in the baking hot desert sun, and I come home and my own brother says he's going to sell me some stew. But I was literally starving to death. I felt like I was on death's door and I was about to die, and all he wanted was my birthright. What good is a birthright going to do me if I'm dead? So I agreed. Sure, that's fine. And you know that little piece of wisdom that they say, don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry? I hadn't heard that yet. That was new to me. So fast forward a couple years, there was a really bad famine in the land. We moved around a lot from well to well, fresh water to fresh water. Mom pretended she was Dad's sister. God made a pact with Dad. You know, normal family stuff. I got married a couple times. Not divorced, just married a couple times. And you know how there's the running joke about in-laws and parents always hate the people that your kids marry? Well, my parents actually wrote down and recorded for all of eternity how much they hated my wives. You see, my wives were Canaanite women, and hating somebody or disliking somebody based on their culture was still very popular at the time. And so they didn't have much compunction about that. But it's okay. In all things, God helped our family to grow and to prosper. He had blessed us, and we did fine. Which leads us to this next part. Dad was dying, unfortunately, and as I mentioned earlier, his favorite thing about me was I was a hunter, and he loved him some steak. So before he would give me his final blessing, before he died, he wanted me to go out and get him some food. So I brought my trusty bow, and I suited up, and I went out and was hunting. And while I was gone, Jacob over here decided that he was going to steal my blessing. My own brother schemed to steal my final blessing from Dad, and he used my own clothes to do it. This is my favorite robe, and I had this on with me when I went out, but I had left some other home. You know, we were a pretty well-off family. I had 2 or 3 other outfits, and he took one of them, and he went to Dad, and Dad was blind, and so Jacob tricked his other senses into convincing Dad that he was me, and it worked. He stole my blessing. Jacob means he grabs the heel, but it also means he deceives. And it is so true. So I get home from hunting, and I find out what had happened. And I'm just sitting in the tent with Dad, just bawling my eyes out, crying. And Dad is furious because he figures it out too. And I'm begging him, please give me another blessing. You can't have just one in there. And so he does, he blesses me, but it's basically, you're going to serve your brother and you're going to live away from the richness of the land. So not only did my brother scam me out of my birthright, but then he steals my blessing and my future, and possibly even the future of my family. So to say that I was angry was an understatement, and I decided I was going to do some scheming of my own. I was going to kill my brother. Luckily for him, Mom had finally had enough of my Canaanite wives and sent him away to live with her brother to find a wife of better stock.
Well, you've heard from Esau, and now I'll tell you the rest of the story. You see, I'm no schemer, I'm no deceiver, I'm just a planner. I've been that way all my life. My mom tells me that when we were born, I came out grabbing my brother's heel. You know, we were twins. I didn't see any reason that he should get all of the favoritism of being the firstborn. We were born within seconds of each other. So anyway, unlike me, who was the planner, always thinking of the future, Esau, he just thought about the present. Instant gratification is what turned Esau on. So you see, he liked hunting and going out in the fields. I stayed around the tents. I tended the sheep and the goats. I cooked when was needed. And one day I was cooking, and Esau came in. He hadn't planned anything to eat, so he was starving when he got in. I really didn't see it was any big deal when I offered to sell him some stew for his birthright. You see, he didn't really think that much of his birthright anyway, because that was off in the future. So he took the stew, I took the birthright. Then, a few years later, Mom came to me. She was a planner too. And she'd heard our dad, Isaac, talking about being ready to die and wanting to bless my brother first before he died. So she had this plan. I wasn't sure it'd work, but she said, trust me. Go to your father and tell him that you're Esau and have him bless you. I had this stew prepared for you, his favorite, and we'll dress you up like your brother in his clothes, and I'll give you some fur for your neck and for your hands so that you'll be hairy like your brother. It was genius. Dad wasn't really convinced too much at first, but when he hugged me and breathed in and smelled Esau's clothes, he was convinced and he blessed me. Now, I figured he was going to say something about, may your crops be great and your flocks be many, and he did that, but wow, he continued. He said, may all the nations of earth bow down to you, and your brothers and sisters and all of your mother's children will bow down to you, and all the families of earth will be blessed through you and through your descendants. You talk about planning ahead, that blessing. My goodness. Well, as good as the plan to fool Dad went, we didn't count on Esau's reaction. He was really ticked. And he wanted to kill me, so I had to get out of Dodge. So anyway, Mom sent me off to her brother Laban. And before I went to Uncle Laban's, Dad blessed my journey again, and I took off to be safe and find a couple of wives anyway, because it was time for me to settle down and get married.
So I was furious. And many of you are probably thinking, rightfully so, who does that? My own brother steals my birthright. That's just unheard of. I wanted to kill him. I wanted to kill him, resurrect him, and then kill him again. I was a hunter. I killed animals for a living. I could have done it easily. Maybe not the resurrecting part, but I could have had a hand with that. But my dear, sweet baby brother gets out of town before I have a chance to do anything, and he goes to get married and to take advantage of the rich blessing that he stole from me. I cannot emphasize that point enough. And so he leaves, and I don't see him again for another 20 years. I don't see my own baby brother again for over 20 years. They say that time heals all wounds, and it's not true. God heals all wounds. You see, at the time that everything bad had happening, I didn't understand what was going on. And in those 20 years, I learned a lot. God showed me a lot, things that I had no idea were coming. And Jacob did steal my blessing, but that doesn't mean that God abandoned me. Jacob left and deprived me of what I felt was justice. But God still took care of me. You can't steal God's plan for your life. So time went on, and slowly God was working in my heart, and he was showing me things that I never thought possible. I was betrayed by my own brother, and God taught me how to love him. I was hurt beyond words could describe, but God showed me how to forgive him. And after a while, there came to a point where I just missed my brother. He was my twin, and I loved him, and I had forgiven him. But I don't mean to pretend to be all high and mighty or righteous or anything like that. This took years. When he first did it, I would have killed him with a smile on my face. And a little bit later, I would have killed him, but maybe without the smile. I would have been a little bit sad, maybe a few tears, but not too much. And one day I made a humongous breakthrough. I wasn't going to kill him. I was just going to break his legs. Because he had wronged me, and I demanded retribution. I was the eldest. I was the firstborn. And I don't care what Dad's blessing said. I was not about to serve my baby brother. But that was pride speaking. And after Dad died, I became the head of the family. And I didn't have time for pride anymore. I had dozens of people and hundreds of animals that depended on me. And it occurred to me, I had dozens of people and hundreds of animals that depended on me. I was a successful man. I had multiple wives that I could afford. I had a great big family. I had huge herds of animals. I was considered wealthy by the time. I was well respected in the community. Dad's blessing or no, I had been blessed by God beyond my wildest imagination. And one day, I got a messenger from Jacob saying that he was finally bringing his family back. And I was so excited to see my baby brother again after over 20 years. I was thrilled. But then I remembered how we had parted. And I remembered what Dad's blessing had actually said. And I got to thinking, was he coming back with an army to take what he felt was his? I didn't know. We had left on not the best of terms. Did he want to kill me now? I didn't know. I had forgiven him, but that doesn't mean that his personality had changed any in the last 20 years. And I had my family to protect. And so I got together a big group of men to go with me just in case.
I was glad that you started by singing about water. Because, water's a pretty big deal in my life, too. I found my wife at a well. And then there's the River Jordan. That was a big deal, too. When I headed off to meet Uncle Laban, and I crossed the River Jordan, I had the robe on my back. When I came back, I had a huge family. Servants, herds, crops. God had really blessed me when I came back. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Dad blessed me for my journey. I went off to meet Uncle Laban. I headed north to Haram where he lived. And I'd gotten up a few miles, and it began to get dark. So I found a place to settle. I set up camp, and I went to sleep. Man, did I have a huge dream that night. You see, there was this stairway from earth up to heaven, and God's angels going up and down the stairway. And at the top of the stairs was God himself. And I heard him say, I am the Lord, God of your grandfather Abraham, God of your father Isaac. And I give you the land you're sleeping on. It's given to you and to your descendants, who are going to be as many as there's dust over the earth. And all the families will be blessed through you and your descendants. And I promise that you're going to come back to this land and reclaim it. And when you do, I'm with you. I will never leave you until all of my promises come true. Now I woke up. I was still pretty scared, not really knowing what I was going to do. So I traveled on to Haram, to where my Uncle Laban lived, and I ran into some people he knew. And then I saw a herd of sheep off in the distance, and the shepherdess was coming. I learned her name was Rachel, and man, was she beautiful. You've heard of love at first sight? That's what it was with me and Rachel. And I found out that she was Uncle Laban's daughter. So we watered the sheep and went back, and I met my uncle, and I asked him for his daughter Rachel's hand in marriage. He said, absolutely, just work for me 7 years. So I did. I tended his flocks, I took care of the sheep and the goats and everything, and my time flew. You know how it is when you're in love. And 7 years passed, and I was ready to get married. I go to Uncle and I say, I'm ready now, give me Rachel and let's get married. You know, they called me the deceiver. Uncle Laban tricked me. Said, nope, you get to marry Rachel's older sister Leah, because we don't have the youngest marrying before the older. So I said, okay, but I still want Rachel. And he said, that's all right, you can marry Rachel too, just work for me another 7 years. So I said, all right. I married Rachel, and then I married Leah, and then I married Rachel, and I kept working. It wasn't as pleasant that time, but still, I was struggling with God. I kept thinking back on my dad's blessing, and then especially that staircase, and God's promise to send me back to the homestead and to take care of me. And things really went quite well. Uncle Laban, his flocks and his herds got bigger and bigger. We were doing quite well. God really was blessing. So I went to him and I said, I've been thinking about going back. And he said, no, don't do that yet. Everything's going so well. But work a little while longer and I'll help you build up something to take back. So we came up with a deal. You see, he'd already set my wages and changed them probably 8-9 times in the 14 years I'd been there. But he said, tell me what you want as wages. And I said, I'll take all the speckled sheep and goats, or those who are black or spotted. And he said, done. And then that night he had his sons take all the speckled and spotted and dark-colored animals out of the herds, leaving which is fine. But God had a plan. And it worked out, and my flocks of the speckled sheep and goats, they grew and grew. I made sure that when the strong sheep were ready to mate, that the bark was stripped off the tree branches, and God told me to put it in the troughs while they mated. And when the weak sheep mated, I didn't do that, and they came out white, and so they were Uncle Laban's. And after 6 years, I noticed that my cousins were getting rather anxious. They were pretty upset at how things were going, and Laban's attitude seemed to change too. So I went to Rachel and I went to Leah. We had 11 sons and a lot of daughters by then, and said, let's go back to Canaan. I've talked to God, and he said, go back. And they said, what about your brother? And I said, I don't know, but God promised that he'd take care of us. So we headed on back. And on the way, I slept. And when I awoke, there was somebody with me, and I was wrestling with him, and we wrestled all night long. And I wouldn't let go of him. And he said, let go of me. It's daybreak. I've got to go. And I said, no, I'm not letting go until you bless me. And he said, tell me your name. And I said, I'm Jacob. And he said, you won't be known as Jacob any longer. Now you'll be known as Israel, for you've wrestled with God and with man and won. And I said, tell me your name. And he said, no. I said, but bless me, because, I was still thinking I needed God's blessing if I'm going to go meet Esau. So he blessed me and was left, kind of grabbed my hip, leaving me with a limp before he went. But he had blessed me. And so I was still a little worried, but I kept thinking back on God's promise and on wrestling with the stranger. There's Esau and those 400 men. Oh, Lord, please keep your promises, but maybe just to make sure, I'll split everybody up. Come on over here, Bilhah and Zilpah, y'all and the kids go over ahead of everybody. And Leah, you and the kids, you go behind them. And then Rachel and Joseph, y'all stay to the rear. We'll split up, and that way if we get attacked, the other groups can go away while one fights them off. Got to get going. Here goes nothing.
No, my brother, get up, get up.
Oh,
it's so good to see you. Oh, it's so good to. Who are all these people?
Oh, my Lord, this is my family that God has blessed me with. Bilhah and Zilpah, come on over. Meet your uncle. And Leah, those are Leah and her kids. And then, come on up, Rachel and Joseph, the apple of my eye. He's my favorite, but don't tell anybody. That could be trouble if it ever got out.
What must that be like? But so I was met by a whole bunch of flocks and herds and people. What was that all about?
Oh, those are my gifts to you, to show my sincerity and to win over your favor, brother.
Jacob, God has blessed me with more than enough. Keep your stuff for you.
Oh, it's so wonderful hearing you say that, but God's blessed me. I have more than I need. You take them, please.
I have forgiven you for everything that happened. But if you insist, thank you very much. All right, time to get going. You ready?
Well, I just want you to know I'm so thankful that you've forgiven me. It means the world. It's amazing. It's unbelievable, really. I mean, looking at you now and how you have greeted me It's like seeing the face of God. Well, I appreciate your offer, but I've got some young goats and sheep and animals and young children too. If we drive them too hard, it could kill the animals. So you go on ahead. We'll follow along behind you.
Okay, but can I at least leave a few men with you to lead you and to guide you and to protect you?
No, that's all right. We'll find our way to Sarah. I'm just so thankful that you've forgiven me, and been great seeing you, brother.
It has been wonderful, but as you wish. All right, guys, let's go.
So you see, things ended pretty well with me and with Esau. Unfortunately, the family drama continues, and our descendants didn't really learn the lessons about God's love and forgiveness the way that Esau had learned and I learned. You've probably heard of our descendants, Israelites and Edomites. They didn't get along so well, but those are stories for another day. I must be going. I bid you farewell and hope to see you soon.